We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Valentin. Welcome back to the BraveCo podcast, men. I am super excited this week. I say that every week, but I am. This week, I have a really incredible man and a guy that I started to get to know last year at a conference, a men's conference called Emerge, which is just incredible. But I heard Tracey Armstrong preaching for the first time at the conference, and honestly, my heart was gripped right away, which it takes a lot. It really does. I try not to lie. I try not to be jaded or whatever. But I've been in the ministry so long, but Tracey has such a powerful voice in the men's movement, but also just in life. And also his prophetic gift and ministry was really, really, really incredible. And then I got to spend some time with him afterwards, just talking to him about life and asking questions. And man, it's just such a cool guy. Tracey is a pastor of Citadel Church. They also plant churches, and him and his wife just do all kinds of discipleship, pouring into couples, pouring into individuals, building up the body of Christ like we do. But this guy's a warrior. This is one of those guys, men, that like if you're looking for someone to follow, because I always say this, like a man needs somebody to look up to, right? Like we all have to have our heroes that help us aim and go like, when I grow up, I want to be like that. Listen, when I grow up, I want to be like Tracey. and we might even be close to the same age, but he's just such a bad man. And so, bro, it's an honor to have you on here. Thank you so much.
Hey, Jason, man, it's good to be with you. And I've been looking forward to this. You know, when I got the invitation to spend time with you, I was like, yes, let's do it. And we had such a good time talking. I mean, just the way you frame things in your mind, and I remember you said something that wouldn't be, it was challenging in the sense that you were putting it out there and you're saying, listen, I walked through this in my marriage and I did this and but the victory that you carried and the victory that you held and the possibility and posture that you kept was dynamic. And I'm glad to know you. Thanks, bro.
Well, hopefully we can inspire some men today. We're right in the middle of our Makings of a Man podcast. And today, the attribute that we're talking about is self-reliance. And so I'm going to dive in here and read a really cool story that maybe some guys have heard, but probably a lot of guys have not heard. It's just Ernest Shackleton. And so, and then we'll dive into it. So Ernest Shackleton was a renowned polar explorer who led several expeditions to Antarctica during the early 20th century. One of his most famous expeditions was the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition of 1914 to 1917, often referred to as the Endurance Expedition. In 1914, Shackleton set out with his crew of 27 aboard the ship of the Endurance, with the goal of crossing the Atlantic. However, the Endurance became trapped in a pack of ice in Weddell Sea, far from their intended route. Despite efforts to free the ship, it eventually became clear that they would have to abandon it. For months, Shackleton and his crew camped on the ice, enduring extreme cold and harsh conditions. Eventually, as the ice began to break up, they launched their lifeboats and made their way to Elephant Island, a barren and uninhabited outcrop in the Southern Ocean. Realizing that they had little hope of rescue from Elephant Island, Shackleton and a small crew set out in one of the lifeboats, the James Caird, on a perilous journey across 800 miles of treacherous sea to reach South Georgia Island, where there was a whaling station. After a harrowing voyage, during which they faced monstrous waves and near starvation, Shackleton and his men finally reached South Georgia Island. However, they landed on the uninhabited southern side of the island. So Shackleton and two others had to embark on a dangerous trek across unmapped mountains and glaciers to reach the whaling station on the north coast. After successfully reaching the whale station and organizing a rescue mission, Shackleton returned to Elephant Island to save the rest of his crew. Miraculously, after over a year stranded in the Antarctic, not a single member of Shackleton's expedition had been lost. Shackleton's leadership and his ability to keep his crew focused and hopeful in the face of unimaginable adversity, have made the Endurance expedition one of the most famous stories of surviving of survival in the history of exploration. Despite failing to achieve their original goal, Shackleton's leadership and his crew's endurance and camaraderie have made the expedition a testament of the human spirit and resilience in the face of adversity. Now, it's such a crazy story. I didn't do it justice, and sorry about the reading, guys. I have like a 6th grade reading level, and so you get what you get. But this is such an incredible story of a group of men in 1914 to 1917. So when you think back to those times, it's not like they had their North Face big puffy jackets and all this survival gear like we had today. Like, you're talking about real primitive survival, and these guys get stuck, encapsulated in the ice. They make a trek after months of being stuck to an island that they can't live on. And then he makes a 800-mile journey with him and a couple of dudes, and then gets to the wrong side of the island, has to climb over a bunch of mountains and glaciers just to get help. Like, you're looking at the power. This really is the power of resilience, but you also see the power of him being able to make decisions and rely on himself to take action, to make something happen, and to not lose one guy is like, it's mind blowing. It is. It's mind blowing. Yeah. And when I think about self-reliance, there's 2 types of self-reliance that I think that we should start with. And there's self-reliance where a guy doesn't want to rely on anybody else. And so he's this self-made man. And we all feel sorry for that guy, right? Because he's got to buy a bigger truck than everyone. He's got to try to have a bigger bank account than everyone. And it never pays off, right? It's the overcompensator. And really what's happening is he doesn't feel confident in himself. And I shouldn't make fun of a guy like that, because that's me sometimes. But the other type of self-reliance is where you know that you can rely on yourself. That's different. When you are capable and confident to execute what God has put you on this earth to do, that's the kind of man that we're trying to be. And Tracey, that's the kind of man that you are. When you look at your life, like where did you learn self-reliance, and how has it played out in your life?
Well, it's really interesting, Jason. One of the things that you find about self-reliance is that you don't know that you have self-reliance until you're forced to be self-reliant.
That's true.
So I grew up without things, right? I grew up without money. I grew up without a father. I don't know my father. I don't know his name. I don't know who he is. So I don't know what his background is. I don't know what he looks like. I know nothing about him. So that forces a certain level of self-reliance. Wow. I had men in my life who were, very reliant on themselves. They were 2-time Olympic boxer, was my uncle, lived with him, lived with other, athletes. They were completely self-reliant, but I didn't have that kind of athletic. I had the ability, but not the intensity, not the intentionality. So I was a dancer. I'm a creative. I like creative stuff. I like media. I like that kind of stuff. So, but I had to learn it because of my deficiency.
Wow.
And I think what we end up having is the people that lead us are the people who truly have learned that they know how to push past deficiency. They know how to push past temporary. They just call things temporary. The year that you had, the circumstances that you had, that when we met, your divorce. Yep. I'm telling you, there are some things that you've had to push past, which makes you a great leader. Great leaders are the people who are self-reliant, not because we want to be, but because we have to be.
Yeah.
And when you are in a position where you have to be self-reliant, someone had to get them out of that situation. They were not going to be able to stay in the ship. They knew that someone had to make that decision. They were not going to be able to stay on that one place of the island. Someone had to do it. When you are in a position where someone has to do it and no one is willing to step up, you're willing to put yourself on the line and make something happen. That is the kind of self-reliance we need now in this season and in this generation. There's a lot of people who are wanting to be self-reliant, like overcompensating, like you said. But the realization of one that really leads, not just doing it for my sake, not for the way I feel, but because I have to become a leader. I think you read probably 3 or 4 times in that scenario, he was a leader. Whoever wrote the article, leader. They identified the leadership. And you identified something that was brilliant in it, was the self-reliance of a leader. The self-reliance that is formulated in the hard times, in the tough season, in the challenging times. And so when we come to this realization that I can figure out anything, that we have a problem solver inside of us, then we are really that self-reliant individual.
Bro, I love what you're saying. And man, it's crazy that you grew up without a dad, and just your story is really incredible. Because I typically, when I think about raising kids and like my role as a dad, one of the roles of a dad, I believe, is to give your sons and daughters challenges, right? That help them to learn confidence and competency, so that when they get to age, right? Now I've had all these experiences in my life. I've watched my dad do cool things. I watched my mom do cool things. We have all these stories about when stuff was about to go bad. Like when I look at my life, I can look at my dad back when I was a young guy. My dad made so many crazy decisions and it could just be like when we're out camping and we have all these stories about like our car wouldn't start and we didn't have jumper cables. And so my dad had to figure out how to use tire chains from one car to another car in order to jump the battery. Like there's all kinds of these crazy stories, right? Of watching my dad problem solve and then pulling me into that and then stepping aside and watching me do it. And I really feel like that's like God's model that we were supposed to grow up with, but so many guys and girls didn't grow up with a father like that. And so, we get to 20, 30, 40 years old and we don't have a lot of confidence that we can do it. We don't have a lot of confidence that we have what it takes. What would you say, like for these guys that are hitting, the 20, 30, 40 years old, and you go like, man, I just don't feel like I can rely on myself. What's like the first couple steps that you would encourage a man to take?
Well, I think what a father is a natural placement of a child in the life, in the family. And so if you weren't naturally placed in that scenario, like you were, like a dad who has, is going to do whatever it takes. We're not going to stay out here. We're going to get our car to the next level. I mean, that's a brilliant mind to think we're going to take these chains and we're going to like jump this car. That's amazing. Now, when you have that kind of person in front of you, living that in front of you, it emboldens you, because part of the sensitivity, right, that we have is that we see, we develop what we see. We become what we see. Years ago, I studied poverty. When you study poverty, it's not what they experience themselves, but it's how they see themselves, that see themselves live through their parents, right? Their parents say, we can't afford this. So poverty comes into a person. We can't do that because then poverty. So a child learns poverty through what they see their parent do, how they see their parent respond. You see a parent respond and they say, well, whatever it takes, we're getting you home, son. Well, that's amazing. That is powerful. Now, when you're not placed in that scenario, you have to purposely and intentionally place yourself in that scenario. You have to get around Jason. You have to get around people. You have to get around people who have solid family. And whether it's, we use 4 terms in our world, in my environment: coaching, training, teaching, and mentoring. So when you aren't in that natural society, in that natural environment, you need to put yourself around a coach. You need to get yourself in training. You have to find out what teaching you need, and you have to be in a place where you can see someone model it, someone really doing it. If I come and hang around you, and I notice some people call you Jay. When I come and hang around you, then I'm going to see you model parenting. I'm going to see you model the way you handle your kids. I've watched a little bit of your social media life, and I'm thinking, man, the way you model just being a human being with potential and powerful and overcoming stuff, that to me is the mentoring aspect. I get to see it. If you've not been mentored by your father because you've not been around him, like myself, for years, Jay, I ran everywhere trying to find, will you be my daddy? Will you be my daddy?
Yeah.
I tried to make everybody my daddy. And I realized that there was a generation that didn't want to be a daddy. They just did not want to. They were busy relying on themselves to do what they want. And I think the key component is make sure you get around someone that you can add to, and someone that can add to you. And when you build that kind of relationship, it becomes coaching, training, teaching, and mentoring. And when you have that, when you do that intentionally, when you do that purposefully, you will overcome some of those deficiencies that you weren't naturally placed in.
Bro,
those things that you miss.
I love that so much. Like those four are so key to actually building a life where you don't run out of capacity, because you're always learning, and you're always growing, and you're always measuring, and then going back and taking a look at where you're failing and where you're succeeding. People look at guys like you and me, and they go, man, if only I could be Tracey, or if only I could be Jason, and because they don't face this stuff. And it's the truth is, like, there's no one that's escaping. It's kind of like life and death. Like, you didn't get to choose whether you were born, and you probably won't get to choose when you die. You just get to choose whether or not you live. And I really feel like that's true. I remember last year in March, I've shared this story before, but it's just so relevant to me. Last year in March, I was on my way to Taiwan, and Taiwan's it's a long international trips, as you know, they're heavy. I was going to speak 15 times in 5 days, and it's 80-minute sessions translated. It's just a lot. And while I was on my way there, my wife called me and she said, "Hey, we have $1,000 in the bank," And I'm like, oh man, that sucks. It's just so horrible. And so I reached out to a couple of friends, and I have a friend group. There's 12 of us that meet every other week, and we've been really tight for a long time. And so I just said to them, like, hey guys, this is where I'm at. A couple of my kids are sick. I'm leaving for 8 days. I'm going to speak a bunch, and I got $1,000 in the bank. Like, please pray for me. And my friends reached out. Two of my friends, of course, reached out and said, hey, if you need to borrow money, we got you. And I wrote back to him and I said, I don't want to borrow money. I want to figure out how to change my life.
Wow.
And because this is an area, honestly, this is the truth. Like, this is an area where I did not feel self-reliant. I did not have confidence. I had, I've been a pastor for literally, this is 20 years that I've been a pastor on staff at Bethel Church. And I don't think entrepreneurially. I wasn't trained to think that way. I wasn't trained to think, how can I grow this part of my life and still be a blessing? And it was very scary and very painful. It was those two things. It's scary, man. I got 5 kids. And I got $1,000 in the bank, and I got real bills with, that are really happening, and a wife that really, really is expecting me to step up. And I had to take a real hard look at my life and go, you don't know what to do here. What are you going to do? And I think one of the first steps for me is always who in my life does know. Who knows what I need to know? And I'll tell you, like, in doing that, I had to really face my ego. And my mom and my dad, I called my mom and I called my dad, and I said, hey, this is where I'm at. And the truth is, I could have asked to borrow money from my dad, and he wouldn't have thought twice about it. Sure. But I called my parents. And I said, hey, would you come look at our finances? Look how we're spending it. Look where it's going. And I need to build a plan. I can't live like this anymore. And so my dad and mom came over and they looked, and my dad says, hey, good news. I said, oh, awesome. What's the good news? He says, "You're not wasting any money." I said, "Oh," he said, "You just don't have any. You don't make
He's not
enough."
making it.
uh, yeah, right. Like we don't got to teach you new habits. We got to help you, and that's where they started to say like, hey, there's only so much fat that you can trim before you start cutting muscle. And, you can only not eat so much stuff, and you can only not afford so much stuff. And so anyways, I didn't have to, like, for me, sometimes when we think about self-reliance, we're just thinking about courage areas, like, oh, I'm going to build a house or go hunting but I think the bigger areas are, I got to face my wife's emotions. I've got to shore up some debt that I have. I've got to change the way that I'm doing life. I have to get men. I don't have any men in my life. Like, to me, those are the real areas, right? Like those become the real areas that we're impoverished, that we're enslaved, that, like, you studied poverty. Those are the real areas that when we look at self-reliance, like, that we can't rely on ourselves. It's the porn problem, right? Like I don't have the ability to rely on myself, the inner man, that inner conviction, and lead myself well. And that becomes, okay, I'm enslaved because I actually don't know how to get to the next step here. I don't know how to get myself out of it.
I think this is brilliant, because what you did doesn't seem like it's self-reliance in the sense that I'm calling friends, I'm calling people, but you're doing what a self-reliant person does. They figure out the problem. Here's where I am. That's how you started every conversation. Here, let me tell you where I am, right? That is the first step of knowing where you are. And that's one of the 4 stages of a emotional intelligent person. If you're going to be self-reliant, you have to have emotional intelligence. You have to be aware of where you are. Here's where I am. Then the second stage of emotional intelligence is relational management, managing the relationships around you. Listen, here's where I am. This is what I know. This is how I need you in my life. Right now, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to be self-aware. I'm going to be relationally aware. Then I'm going to be socially aware. What do I need to do with my world around me to make me a better world? And how do I affect my wife? This is affecting my wife. So you're socially aware. That's the third key to emotional intelligence. I'm socially aware. My kids, my circumstances, you as parents, all this. I'm aware of others outside of me. Then it becomes relationship management. And I'm not only aware of my relationship, now how do I manage myself in this? And that's what self-reliance is how you manage yourself in the midst of a world that's around you, where you have other people, you have other people's problems, you have your problems, you have church problems, you have 15 times going to speak in 5-day problems. I'm getting a phone call from my wife for problems. I have friends that, hey, I give money for you, but then I don't want to do that because you have problems. And I think this idea of being a man is like God sits down and says, listen, we're going to create a being, and we're going to make them get where their natural desire is to get as close to death as possible and then not die, and then come out and go, we didn't die. Let me tell you how it happened. It's like, and then model that in front of, because that's pretty much what we do from the time we climb trees when we're a kid to the time that we're taking, tire chains and trying to start a car with it. Those are near-death experiences, and those times are the times that really are forming us and making us. And it shows us that we literally are created in the image of God, because God looked at darkness and he says, oh, can be better. God looked at void and said, this is better. This can be better. And then he created us out of that same self-reliance. He gave us his self-reliance in the power, the gifts of God, the Holy Spirit, the word of God. He made us in his image and his likeness, that we are exactly in his likeness.
Bro, I love that so much. I think that there's something so empowering when we come to a place in our life where we know that we know that we can do it. I grew up in a Christian school, and I'm really thankful for that. My parents sacrificed a lot to send us to a Christian school. They didn't have any money. At one point in our life, my dad woke up in the middle of the night and someone was stealing our cars out of our driveway, and he called the cops, and the cops said, "No, Chris, That's not your cars being stolen. That's them being repossessed. We laugh
Oh
now,
man.
right?
Yeah, yeah. It's tough. It's
So,
tough.
my parents were sacrificing a lot. We didn't have money, and they believed so much in our development, and going to that Christian school. And one of the downsides to going to a Christian school in Weaverville was was there was one teacher for 6th grades, and I wasn't good at school. And the effect of those early years in my life was I grew up thinking that I wasn't good at school, and thinking that there were things that I couldn't learn. And that was really true. So when I got to high school, I was so far behind that when I got to high school, I just decided that cheating was the only way to make it fair. And I'm not saying that's great. It was the way that I solved that problem. Right.
Yeah.
But of course, the effect of cheating all through high school and was that, which is really interesting because I had a great character in most of the areas of my life, my purity life. But when it came to taking tests and things like that, I literally just didn't care. And, but what happened is I remember when I got out of high school, I was married very young at 18, had my first son by 19, my third child at 24. I remember, starting to come to this point when I was about 20, 21, where I started to realize that I'm actually really good at problem solving. I may not be great at math. I may not be good at English, but I'm really, really good at problem solving. And I learned that I can solve really practical problems. Well, guess what happened? That also then carried over into, I bet I could solve the problem of learning how to write. I bet I could solve the problem of learning how to, and I realized the ultimate thing that I didn't get growing up was you can learn how to learn. You can, that ability, the confidence that I didn't get really honestly until I was 20, 21, 22 years old. And then it started to build from there. I remember gaining confidence. And that's one of the biggest gifts having, when I look back, right, I'm 44 years old now, which is not that old, but it's also not that young. I've had enough experience now that when I go into a new situation, I go, man, if I put my effort and energy into this, it may not ever be my top strength, but I can absolutely figure something out. I have the capacity, the capability. I can trust myself to move this forward. And that's huge, right? That's massive. And to be a dad, to be a leader, to be a husband, that ability to go, I can learn, I can figure this out. I'm not stuck. The way that my brain was wired, the way that I was born, the way that I was taught, that's not how I'll be forever. I can actually grow and change. It's a big deal.
It is a massive deal. And it's recognizing what people would underestimate in your own life that actually makes you self-reliant. I think there's some things that the gift and the skill set that you learned is your superpower is that I know how to learn. I learn how to learn. And that is critical thinking. I think about my thinking and that makes me learn. And your ability to think about your thinking and to learn from your mistakes or learn from others' mistakes or learn from every problem, that is a lifetime learner. And I'm discovering that about you is that you just chosen to keep learning. I'm a lifetime learner and I'm going to learn. And then in that, it does give you a self-confidence and a confidence in who you are and what you're called to do. And I believe that if a person can not just look at their world and go, listen, everything falls apart for me. Nothing works good for me. I am, and change who they are in the environment, change who they are in the, in the space. There's this thing on Amazon. I don't know if I should say any of the brands, but there's this thing on Amazon. I already said it. So where if you're looking to buy something, you can take it virtually and put it in your room, and it's called augmented reality.
Wow.
Augmented reality. So you can look at it and go, oh, this is where this is going to fit. This is how it's going to go. And I think most people they don't augment their reality enough to put themselves in the right scenario or see how they can actually interact with the world around them. They just see how the world is affecting them. It's almost like a big bang mindset that, oh, this is banged against me. Now I'm going to just keep repetitively being formed by it. Jesus had to turn and look at a tree at one point and say, listen, this will not bear fruit on me, and then move on from it. And when you realize that there's things that are always trying to keep you stuck at the tree, trying to bear that moment on you where you can't move past it, you have to tell that thing to die so that you can go into what you're called to do, which is the Father's business, is what he had to go and do. And when you realize that you have to change, you have to augment your reality, no one is going to do it. That's why I think self-reliance is good. Even though it would be a term that most people go, you should be God reliant. Don't be self-reliant. It's like, okay, God has a writer in the scripture, and he's very good. And he writes this: I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That means I have to be showing up if Christ is going to strengthen me. So don't take away my eye. Let me be my eye. I have to have a reliance and a self-reliance if God's going to empower me. And this idea of this, oh, it's him. No, it is him, but it's you. And you got to bring, it's a co-laboring, right? It's a co-laboring. And this a power to have reliance on yourself means that you have to change the way you see yourself in every one of these environments, in every one of these circumstances. The identity that you have in yourself is what's going to help you do what Amazon has helped us do, augment our reality. We're going to see ourselves in that scenario and change it. You know, you were telling a story of your father, looking out the window, someone stealing a car. I was playing as a kid and I saw someone driving my mom's car down the road, and I ran home going, someone's stealing your car. Someone's stealing your car. And she goes, no, baby, they repossessed their car. And I remember that day, I didn't like that reality. I didn't like the reality. That was not the reality I was going to live with. I refuse. And so I had to actually say, I refuse that reality, and I had to augment my reality. I had to see me differently in it. And that made me respond differently to every circumstance, everything that came my way. I had to respond differently. Growing up without a father, I have a reality. I grew up without a father. What does that make me do? I have to augment my reality. I'm now going to be a dynamic father. I'm going to be an amazing father. I've got to put myself, and I had to envision myself, Jason. I had to envision myself in this scenario where things were transformed and changed. I remember at 18 years old driving down the road, and there for years I was told I was stupid. My teachers told me I was stupid. My teachers told me, Jason, they said, listen, my English teacher, I remember this is just branded, it was stuck into me. And they said, Tracey, you better be funny or good looking, because you'll never do anything with the English language. You are, I mean, this is my teacher. This is the person that's supposed to be building me, teaching me, training me. And they're like, you better be funny or good looking, because there is nothing else that you're going to accomplish. And I mastered funny and worked on being good looking. I don't know if those were accomplished, but the realization is that was my reality at 18. And at 18, I chose to change that reality. And now this is from when I was in junior high all the way up. I was telling myself, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. My teachers think I'm stupid. My mom thinks I'm stupid. My family thinks I'm stupid. Everyone thinks I'm stupid. So I might as well embrace it. And I started talking to myself with this kind of reality. I'm stupid. Well, my grades went from A's to all the way down to nothing. And so my high school teacher says, you're just stupid. You might as well forget this. And then at 18, wasn't saved or Christian. I'm just sitting in my car, and I remember looking in the rearview mirror, and I thought to myself, there was a prompting, and I know the prompting was the Holy Spirit. There was a prompting, and this prompting was, you're a genius. And I remember thinking, that's a different term than I've heard from anyone ever in my life. That's never come to me. That's like, I've been told I'm stupid my whole life. You don't do anything well. You're a failure in all that you do. And I remember thinking, I'm a genius. And I took the rearview mirror and I turned it to me. And I said, from today forward, you're a genius. And it changed the way that I thought about me in the environments that I was in. It augmented my reality. Now I started to every day wake up and go, you're a genius. Look in the mirror, look in my own eyes. If I can't say it in my own eyes, then I can't trust when someone comes and says, you're doing great. I didn't trust when people said I was doing great, because I've been hearing all my life I wasn't doing great. And so now I didn't even trust that. So I had to rely on myself to get myself together, right? We're waiting for someone else to shake us but you're the one that has to look in the mirror and go, self, you better get this together. And I had to tell myself for over and over, this was the self-reliance part that I wanted to share, is that I had to look in the mirror and go, Tracey, you're a genius. Well, then something started happening. Yeah. Problem solving started coming. I realized that anything that was coming in front of me, I could fix it. I could figure it out. I could work it out. I could do it. Because I went from being stupid to being a genius overnight. It was just a statement. But somehow that statement from the whisper of the Holy Spirit just kind of hit me. And I was like, I believe it. And I wasn't saved, but I knew later as I got saved, I was like, that was the Holy Spirit. That was not me. He said, you're a genius. And that changed my mind about me, and it augmented my reality.
Bro, I really do. I've got chills over here. It's incredible because, again, I'm with you. Like most guys, most church culture wants to tell you, God's the one that's going to do it. God's the one that's going to save you. God's the one that, and although we can do nothing apart from Christ. The flip side of that is God's not coming in and parenting your kids. God's not coming in and changing your marriage. God's not coming in and getting you dressed and waking you up in the morning like it's time to go to work. Yeah. That's us. That is our life. And of course we got to partner with God, but I'm the one that's got to make a decision on who I'm going to be, where I'm going to go, how hard I'm going to work, what I'm willing to sacrifice. And way too many people are waiting for God to come and make their life better. He's not going to come and make your life better. He's coming for you to make your life better. He's going to give you the power. He's going to give you a couple tools, but that shovel is not going to dig its own hole. You're going to dig it. And man, what I like about this series has been, again, helping guys to look at the different attributes in their life and go, okay, how can I tackle this? How can I get this going in my life? How can I improve this? And this is one of those that, guys, if you have a very low confidence in your ability to execute, to follow through, that you can, the first step is don't shame yourself, right? It's not you're bad, something's wrong with you, you're less of a man, you got to go get your man card punched. None of that's true. Right? Then none of that's true. Tracey and I both have had places and have places in our life where we're having to confront this, to step up and to really go, okay, this is an area where I actually have a lot of insecurity being able to rely on myself. What am I going to do about that? What am I going to do about that? You can lay in your bed and feel sorry. You can wish you had a better dad like Tracey. You can wish that you had a more training and better teaching like me in finances. Or you can say, okay, this is an area I'm afraid in. I'm going to have to be brave, get some courage, but I got to execute. I got to move forward, because it really is the key to all of this stuff is confidence comes through competency. And you gain competency as you try, as you do. It's John Maxwell's success ladder, right? It's that I'm willing to have an idea. I try that idea, it fails. I look and I learn. I research why it failed. I execute again, right? I try again, and then I fail a little less than last time. And I look at it, I observe it. It's just when we learn to fail up, that's how we begin to build confidence. You can also reach out to other men in your life like I did and go, hey, this is an area that I suck at, but I want to grow. There's nothing about that that's bad, right? That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't even mean that you can't rely on yourself. It actually means I can rely on myself to find a solution. Everything that you need in your life isn't inside here. It's not. Everything that you need in your life is probably inside of your community. It probably is. And you have to be able to rely on yourself, that when you get to the end of your rope, that you're going to reach out. And even before you get to the end of your rope, that you're going to go, how do I best solve this problem? How do I best grow this area? We got to kick our ego to the side, right? And be willing to step up and to do the things that are hard. So your activation this week, we're doing these weekly activations that are really fun. And I think, guys, let's find that one area in your life that you go, man, I don't feel like I can rely on myself here. It could be pornography. It could be your finances. It could be the way that you communicate to your wife. It could be something at your work or your business that you're running. And I want you to start asking the Holy Spirit, what's the solution to this? Who can I count on to help me learn this? How can I grow myself? How can I push into the pain and grow myself here? How do I tackle this problem? And it will start with, I just want you to maybe start with what Tracey did and look in the mirror and say to yourself, you can solve this. You can do this, or you're a genius, whatever it is. That's that thing where you start to say, you're not stuck. This isn't your forever. This is an opportunity for you to grow. You can do this. So guys, let's tackle the hard things and let's build some of these attributes in our life that really help us grow strong as men. Tracey, did I leave anything out?
That's
Is there anything
solid.
that you want to add?
That's solid. And I think, I think the only other thing I would say is make sure when you're working on yourself at that level, you're also celebrating something in your life so that you don't 100%. Get like bogged down on how difficult this is. Know that, man, I am winning here. I am winning here, and be your best cheerleader, be your own cheerleader. And at the same time is be your own person that's helping you, that's breaking you through.
I love that. It's James 1. Consider it pure joy or hilarious laughter when you encounter various trials, right? For the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And that is, that's such a massive key is we have to, you're not going to hardcore taskmaster yourself into a life that you love. You're not. That's slavery. So you're going to rejoice. You're going to count it pure joy. You're going to, it's for the joy set before God that he endured the cross. All those things give us the energy to actually follow all the way to the end. Tracey, you are a gift, man. You're a blessing. And I appreciate you coming on here. I'd love to have you on again and talk about your life and unpack it. Cause man, I just know that there's so much inside of you and what you've been through. And again, as a guy who's been in ministry for 20 years and is starting to lead men and stuff, you've been doing this stuff for a lot longer than I have. And just the legacy that guys like you have laid for guys like me. And it's just incredible, man. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. This was great. And I know that your listeners are blessed every week and every time you produce. So thank you for inviting me, introducing me to your tribe. And I'd love to have you come on my show and let's do some work together. Let's do this together. I'm excited. Thank you.
Amazing, bro. BraveCo Men, let's go out and kick some butt this week. Stay brave, guys. We'll see you next week. Hey, BraveCo Men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.